I'd rather be with you. Yeah.
Hello everybody, welcome to Good Vibes Radio. My name is Alice and today we are with Frederick, who is the co-founder of Voi. Together we're going to spend 45 minutes approximately talking about e-scooters, micromobility, entrepreneurship, and of course how to keep vibes up, because we need it. We need optimism and we need courage. And for me, I've been finding it by talking and exchanging every day with entrepreneurs that I love. So you are all welcome to ask any questions to Frederick in the chat that you see on your right, and he will be happy to answer it. How are you, Frederick?
I'm good. I'm super happy to be here. You and me tried a couple of weeks ago to do this Good Vibe session, but my Wi-Fi connection was really poor back then. So it was like this feeling. It was a bitter feeling. So I'm from Sweden. I'm born up in the north. I was a skier, and sometimes when you wanted to ski, you went out and it was just like too snowy. But you tried, but you never made it. And it was that. It was exactly
frustration.
That feeling. Yeah, it was a bummer. But today I feel good, and my Wi-Fi is also good. It seems like.
All right. Yes, it's a perfect connection.
How do you feel? Sitting in France?
I mean, I'm feeling good. I'm happy to be talking with you. I know your story is really interesting, and I would love all the people here to discover it. But first, maybe you could start by telling us what is Voi.
So Voi Technology is a company that I founded together with three co-founders, with the idea of that it's completely messed up that we move around in cities in like cars and taxis and so on. And we thought that the future would be more of an electric one, where you have light electric vehicles, you share them. And we started with the e-scooters, so shared e-scooters. I mean, in Paris, for example, you see Os, you see Lime, you see Bird, you see Dot, and all over in Europe and the world, you have seen e-scooters basically exploding the last 2 years. And I think it's an excellent alternative to other modes of transportation when it comes to getting around in cities. And now we started in Stockholm 2 years ago. Back then, it was only Os in Stockholm and Lime in Paris, in Europe. And since then, as most of you probably know, we have seen e-scooters pretty much in all European cities. We have grown from one city to more than 40 cities. And we continue to do so. So it's very clear that there is a demand for new modes of getting around and micromobility vehicles such as e-scooters.
Cool. 40 cities, it's pretty impressive. Yes, it's a very competitive market, many players. We're going to talk about that as well. How is it going for you in Stockholm personally? How do you live this current? The crisis impacted your business?
Stockholm is an outlier now, or Sweden is an outlier now on the global scene in how we are handling Corona. Sweden is not in a confinement or full lockdown. Restaurants are open, bars are open, gyms are open, even. So, I mean, we have quite strict recommendations from our health authorities, like work from home, keep social distancing and so on. But life is, I would say, like 70% as normal.
Wow.
I mean, you don't go out and you don't have like gatherings and parties and so on in big groups. But people still, they have dinners, they meet their families, they meet their friends and so on. And what that means for us at Voi is, I mean, we saw this coming quite early, since we have business in pretty much all Western European countries, but we also have a team in China. So already in January, February, we saw that this is getting bad down in China. Our employees were locked in. They had to download these geo-tracking apps and so on and scan wherever they went. And then we saw it coming to Italy and quickly realized that this is a hit, almost like a torpedo that was hitting the Voi ship, and it was about to hit very hard. So in February and March, we unfortunately had to shut down most of our markets, pause operations. Paris, Lyon, Marseille, Bordeaux are examples of cities where we had to pause operations. But in some markets, and Sweden is the clearest example. Of course, we have continued to run our e-scooters, and Sweden is the market where we have seen the least impact. So we have continued to operate, and we continue to operate with quite decent metrics and performance.
Have you been cost cutting? Have you been laying off some people? How did you adapt to this crisis?
Yes, unfortunately, in March, so a bit more than a month ago, we had to make the decision that our cost base, Voi costume, was too big. We took very much an approach of that. Let's hope for the best, but prepare for the very worst, and that this year will be a very broken year for us as a business, and I think for Europe overall when it comes to how people are moving around, traveling and so on. So unfortunately, we had to take actions both on the employee side and the non-employee side. We had to lay off around a third of our workforce, which is one of the worst things you can go through as an entrepreneur, but also as an employee at a company, independent of whether you're staying or whether you're leaving. And then on the rest of our employees, we put pretty much everyone on furlough. So in France, it's called what's it called?
Chômage partiel.
Yeah, exactly. I learned that word. Now we're starting to come back to markets more and more, and are taking people off furlough. But overall, the company is a third smaller than what it was 2-3 months ago.
Thank you for answering my question and being so transparent, because by doing good vibes, I don't want to sound too unrealistic. We can keep the vibes up, but we still need to face a certain reality, right?
I agree.
And so I think it's important to remind that cost cutting has been part of your job as an entrepreneur, and you did it because you had to do it to survive. Yeah.
And I think a learning from me, or it has been amplified during this, but I've seen it before in my life as well, is that, you want to keep good vibes and, you want to build a strong culture and so on. But you build a strong culture by being transparent, and you build a strong culture and, belief and purpose. Because people can take bad news if you're transparent, but what people don't like is when you're not transparent and when you're not sugarcoating things and so on. We're trying to take very much that approach, be quite open with all of our employees that this is the current situation. This is how much this is how much cash we have in the bank. This is how long it will take us if confinement lockdown continues throughout the year to August to next year. So this is what you need to prepare for. Do you want to be in? Then this is the situation. If you don't want to be in, then probably Voi currently is not the right place to be at. So I think I'm a strong believer in transparency.
And so before going to the micromobility and how we could, what are your dreams behind Voi and how do you see the future? I would like to go back to your entrepreneurial path. So where did you grow up? What's your background? What were moms and dad doing? What leads you to being the founder of Voi?
Yeah. Good question. So I grew up in the north in Sweden, so 600 kilometers north of Stockholm. It's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. It's close to the most famous ski resort in Sweden. It's called Åre, where they do like this downhill skiing championships and so on. So I don't know, it was already when I was like 12, 13, I realized, the power of running your own projects instead of being employed. So my first two jobs were, the first one was working in the forest with planting trees. So it was basically, my grandfather sent out me and my cousins in the forest like 7 a.m, and then he picked us up 6, 7 in the evening. So it was like really hard work. Like some people would call it even like children labor, but we learned how to work hard. And my second job was sales, so telesales. I sold newspapers, and through that, I checked a couple of months ago. I think I got in total I got like 20,000 no's. So I got very like non-sensitive in getting no's and rejections. And I think those two things, learn what hard work is and learn how to sell. And also I had personally I had a deep interest for technology and just, technical things. So that was the starting point for my entrepreneurial career. And then it's just continued.
Getting 20,000 no's, that's an experience, because we always tell our entrepreneurs, never take it personally, talk to your customers. It's okay to get a feedback. It's actually constructive, etc. But with this experience, it becomes obvious for you.
Yeah, it becomes very obvious. It's just like you become like this frying pan that you cook food in, and just like but then I would say, it's one thing to do it over phone, because then you don't see the other person, but then to all entrepreneurs and people who are like pitching their dream and something that you have put in so much energy and emotions in, then I also become like more emotional, and you care. Just selling a newspaper that you haven't written even, that's just like...
Yeah, but it's a good exercise. That's what I mean.
It's a very good exercise.
All right. So, and right after this experience, you've been studying what?
So after high school, I went into... I studied at Stockholm School of Economics, but I also did military service in Sweden.
Okay.
So we had some kind of semi-mandatory military service. You didn't really have to do it, but some people, like 10,000 people every year, had to do it, and I did it at the language school. So I learned. It was like interpreter academy, so I learned Russian and some intelligence. Russian and intelligence, really, which was a crazy experience. It was like the military way of teaching. So they locked us in for a year, pretty much. I think I was outside of the military camp like 1 or 2 times that year, and then they just gave us hundreds of new words and a lot of grammar every week, and said, test on Friday. If you don't make the test, then you're out. So was an interesting experience.
Wow. Okay. And so I was thinking of, I was saying this joke last time I saw you, like you started working a little bit like James Bond, like you were working for the army, for the Swedish army in Russia.
Yeah.
That's a good pitch for a movie, right?
It's a very good pitch for a movie. Unfortunately, it wasn't as glamorous as James Bond. It was no fast cars, not that much cocktails, no beautiful women around us, and so on. It was more, translating and bureaucracy.
Okay.
But it was fun. I learned Russian, and I learned a lot about the Russian society. And
For how long did you do that?
I was there in total for almost 3 years. but I quickly realized that working for the government was not my thing. I think working for the government status quo was very much encouraged. And I knew from early on that I wanted to challenge status quo and wanted to change things and build things. So then I left for an internet company also in Russia, which is like Le Bon Coin, so the Craigslist of Russia.
Yes, of course. All right.
Which was
Russian version.
Exactly.
Okay. And this first experience gave you the desire to run your own?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much since we planted trees. Me and my cousins, I had been founding and running different entrepreneurial projects. I tried pretty much anything. I knew that I wanted to build things, and I knew that I wanted to be free. So free in the sense of I could wear whatever clothes I wanted to. I could work with the people I wanted to work with, and I could work the hours I wanted to work, and so on. So I think those two things, the desire to build and the desire to be free, had been there all the time. I mean, back to your question. So my family, my mom is a nurse and my father is a teacher in entrepreneurship and psychology. But we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the family, or a lot of my relatives are entrepreneurs. I had seen the power of building things from early on, and I guess that's what led me to this.
But you worked as well a little bit as a consultant at BCG, right?
Yeah, I worked at BCG, and
which is a very good school.
I mean, it's an amazing school. It's an amazing school. It's you get to work with some of the smartest people out there. At least the school smart. I mean, the most school smart people out there. And then, of course, there are street smart people. And the street smart people you meet more at places like the family, I would say, and out on the streets. But it's a great experience. I love to work with ex-BCG and ex-consultant people. We have a few of them at Voi, and they challenge your thinking intellectually in such a good way. So it was a good experience. But the same there, I felt that I felt like I was boxed. I was put in this box, and it was a very good box. It was a very nice box with a lot of other nice people in the box, but it was still a box, and you want to be free.
And what made you choose this sector, this market of micromobility? So
I think, it was already living in Russia. I lived in Moscow. Moscow is a crazy city. It has this pulse, I think, that you only can find in a few cities in the world. It's like this 24/7, boom, 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 boom. And that made me look into the sharing economy, the future of cities, and so on. So when I came home after BCG, I founded another company called Guest It, which is also in the sharing economy. So we're like a short-term rental platform. So we help people rent out their apartments and homes short-term. So if you want to rent out, if you can go on vacation this summer, which you probably can't, and want to rent out your apartment for 4 or 6 weeks, then Guest It comes in and takes care of everything. And that grew my fascination for the sharing economy even bigger, and realized that this urban transportation question wasn't solved and isn't solved yet. And me and my co-founders, we wanted to build a big company. We wanted to build an impactful company.
How did you meet your co-founders, and who does what?
Douglas is our COO, so he's running operations, and we met in the army, so military school. So he has a background in operations, logistics, and startups. And Philip and Adam are my technical co-founders, and Philip is a full stack developer. He built the backend, and Adam is a front end developer and built the front end early on. So we had I think it's a good mix. We had a good mix. We had to some extent builders, Adam and Philip, operations, and doing Douglas, and I did most of the sales and HR and try to find people and the investors for this. So I think that I mean, you probably want those three things, like a seller, a builder, and then operations doer or community.
Cool.
Right.
Cool. And how did you start it? Like the very beginning, the first 3 months, what did you do?
No, so we started to try out the idea when I was running my previous company, and Douglas was so my COO. He was leading an incubator, a bit similar, or like a startup community, similar to the family, but in Sweden. And then we started to look into this, and we saw like all over the world back then. This was early 2018. It was like. It was a bit like this. It was something that was about to happen in micromobility. In Israel, you saw like all these different scooters, skateboards, whatever, just popping up. In Santa Monica, you saw a bird trying out the scooters on UCLA. And we just realized that, I mean, Europe should be an even better place for all these solutions, because we have better infrastructure with bike lanes and so on. We have politicians and people who are less car-centric and more progressive when it comes to transportation. And we had this will also to decrease the number of cars and taxis in city centers. So we decided to kick this off, and we realized also that I mean, quite a lot of capital will be needed since we need to buy hardware. It's a capital intensive business, and so I went out completely. Immediately, and tried to find capital, found capital that through some old connections, and then off we went.
All right. So there is a question from Sid, who is: are you dealing with the scooter's battery charging like your competitors?
So I think if we look at this industry and what has happened over the last 2 years since we went live, in the beginning, we and some of our competitors, we worked a bit with gig workers, so anyone could sign up to help with charging. And then the product in itself, the hardware, was very, very early generation. Then it was like a consumer product, I would say. So you had to take it in, charge it, and then put it out again. And it lasted only for, say, 15 kilometers or something like that. So 3-4 rides. Then we invested a lot in vehicle design and vehicle engineering, and started to build hardware, build scooters for sharing that was built for being out on the streets, getting like 10 rides a day or something, or 10 rides before you need to charge them. And the latest generation of vehicles that we are putting out and have deployed have swappable batteries. So, I mean, for me, from day one, sustainability has been core in this. And with swappable batteries, we both get more financially efficient and operationally efficient operations, but also from a sustainability point of view, what we do now is that we go around with the electric cargo bikes mainly, or electric vans, and swap the battery out on the streets. We don't need to take the scooter in and out. And that's, of course, a huge efficiency gain. And back to your question, Sid, compared to some competitors, I think the European companies, so us, Tier and Dot, are far ahead of the Americans now. So we are starting to have a quite big fleet of swappable scooters, while the Americans are still, they're still a bit stuck in the old generation of scooters, non-swappable ones. So I guess that answers the question. But we will.
And how do you explain that the European ones are much more innovative than the American ones?
I think specifically in this case, I think since the American companies, they have quite huge operations in the US also, where they can work with, or they are working with gig workers still to a greater extent than what we do and believe in and can do here in Europe. I mean, since more, I think it's a year and a half back now, we don't really work with gig workers. We have in-house operations and third-party logistics companies. So for them, seeing how cheap it is with gig workers in the US, they can still run the operations, I think, relatively cheap. Here in Europe, we need to be, smarter on the product side, because the labor aspect of things is more expensive, and that has forced us to move in this direction faster. And so that is one thing. And another interesting thing in this, I think, is that the American players raised
much more.
They raised huge amounts of money very, very early on, and they invested that money in early generation scooters that didn't really hold up. We were sitting on our cash for a longer time, and now, we definitely see that we were ahead of them when it comes to product. So it has shifted very much. I mean, they were the first ones out.
What we call a leapfrog.
Yeah, we have leapfrog.
Yeah,
definitely.
We have a question. Evgeny is asking, hey, Frederick, thank you for taking the time. I love your company. We are planning a business to offer a flat rate for public transport in Germany. Can you please tell a little bit about your business model? How many times do you need to rent a scooter until they are break even? Is it possible to have a monthly flat fee? How are they lasting? How long are they lasting? And how do you deal with the high cost of charging them each night? And I know some of this part might be confidential, but maybe you can still give us some insight.
So I think if I zoom out a bit there, and when we think about our business model, and we think a lot about unit economics, since we are an online, offline operations business. Unit economics is like the biggest focus for us in everything we do. And for us, unit economics is quite simple, really. It's revenue per vehicle per day, it's charging cost per vehicle per day, and it's depreciation per vehicle per day. And I mean, 2 years back from now, it was very expensive to operate this business, because we had a quite bad product and we were quite bad at operations. Now we have we are in some kind of pivotal point now, or pivotal moment, where we see that our product, both on the software side and hardware side, and our operations are becoming so strong, so that we can operate profitably in markets, even in this like Corona COVID-19 situation. So the number of rides we need to get per day to operate profitably have gone down significantly, the last 2 years. And that is, of course, it's the key for us as a company and for this industry to survival. And it's also, we started our vision at Voi with that city should be for living, free from noise and pollution. And if micromobility should be for everyone, it needs to be cheap. And for it to be cheap, we need to get the operational costs down. And now we see that we're getting the operational costs down so much that we'll definitely be able to democratize it even more and make it affordable through monthly passes, daily passes, weekly passes, loyalty programs, and so on, that we couldn't really do a year or 2 years ago.
All right. Benoit Dupont, who is an amazing entrepreneur that I know, he started a company called We Maintain. Hey, Frederick, are you in the urban transport you are in the urban transport industry? Do you know what is the most common mode of transportation in the world? It is elevators. And it's his company.
Okay. Amazing.
He got me. I thought he had a real question. But Benoit, you're a bastard. Okay, and Awais. Hi, Frederick. Is it hard for European companies to get into the Asian market? Because you said I have a team in China. So you operate in China?
We're not operating in China, actually, but we have supply chain and vehicle engineering and so on.
Okay.
I think, it's definitely hard. It's hard for, if we look at our specific case, it's hard for a few reasons. We are an early industry. I think of this as like we are in minute 10 of a 90-minute football game or something like that. We still have so much to solve, both internally when it comes to product and operations. We're getting there. As I said, we're on some kind of pivotal point now, but also so much to do on like the regulatory side and so on, since we actually use public space. using public space, we have to work closely with cities and decision makers and so on. And solving that in your home markets, in the European markets, is difficult. And we see when we look at some of the Asian markets, I mean, China, Japan, Korea, and so on, it's perhaps even more difficult given where we come from and so on. But the market potential is huge. I think micromobility will play a very important role in all countries and in all cities, say 5-10 years from now, but it will just take longer in some markets and a shorter time in some markets, and Europe will be the leading one here.
Let's switch a little bit on the another part of your job, which is dealing with the cities and dealing with legislation, because that is a huge part in the strategy of growth. How city welcomes solutions like yours, and what do you have to do to adapt your product to each city? Do you have to adapt your product to each city? How do you manage that?
Not really. And I think if we zoom out once again a bit, we see regulations coming on two levels. It's on national level and it's on city level. On national level, it's about vehicle classification. So how much can an e-scooter weigh? How should the lights look like, and so on. On a city level, it's more about how do we want urban transportation to look like in Paris, in Bordeaux, Lyon? How many players should be able to operate? How should parking look like, and so on? And I think it's this typical case of where it's quite frustrating operating in Europe with different regulations in all countries compared to the US, where it's more of a homogeneous regulation all over the country. We said from day one that we know there will be very well-funded American competitors. It's mobility, it's something new, and there is a lot of money in Silicon Valley and a lot of good people, entrepreneurs, operators at companies like Uber, Lyft, and other transportation companies. But what they usually miss and what they usually don't do that well is working with cities and working with legislators. We saw it at Uber. We saw it at the Chinese players, Mobike, Ofo, and so on. And we saw a big opportunity to do that better, to from day one partner up with cities, green light markets before we go into them, push towards regulations, push towards licenses, and so on, because we think that without...
Excuse me, but do you think that the fact that you are European makes you better understand culturally how to take into account this legal part?
100%. Here in Europe, it's very obvious. I mean, I respect our American competitors a lot. I mean, the people working there, the management and so on, are incredible operators, incredible entrepreneurs and so on. But it's very clear for me also that they don't understand Europe. They don't understand regulations and the culture and sentiment here in Europe around what you can and what you cannot do on public space, laborers, employees, and things like that. It's just very obvious from all of the conversations I'm having with our American peers.
Just curious, how it's been with Paris?
I think Paris is a quite good example of that, where it has been the biggest market for our biggest American competitor, Lime, where they have taken a very, very Uber-like approach, going in heavy, aggressively, just go. Do not ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Where I think the European players have tried, it's mainly us, it's Dot, where we've tried to keep a dialogue with the city, work towards sustainable regulations and so on. And in Paris now we have a public tender coming up. I think the results will be announced in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and I think that one will be a good. It would be a good proof point of what's working and what's not working.
So you're betting on the dialogue.
Yeah. I think that's the only way mid and long term.
Yeah,
it is. A difference in our business compared to ride hailing is that ride hailing, Uber and Captain and the ride hailing companies, they are to some extent operating in the shadows. You don't know You don't know how many ride-hailing companies there are in a city. We are operating with our fiscal assets and our brand on the streets. It's super easy for a city to compound and take punitive measures if we don't work together.
I wish, because maybe I'm unrealistic, but this confinement just blocked every car, so we don't see any cars. The sky is blue, not today, but the air is fresh. Even animals start to walk in the street, and it makes me believe a little bit more that it would be possible to have a city without a lot of traffic. And what do you think about that? Like, do you think, maybe it's wishful thinking, but do you think there is like an opportunity here for companies like yours to actually say use our solutions more than cars?
I think overall that this COVID-19 situation is just doing so that all trends just accelerate, all trends speed up. And it doesn't matter whether it's like the retail death, the retail apocalypse, or the sustainability question. We had a strong movement from last year with Greta Thunberg, our Swedish young woman who was touring the world. And in cities like Paris with Anne Hidalgo, who's very much pushing for a green, sustainable urban transportation agenda. And if COVID-19 doesn't show how vulnerable and fragile the world is, then I don't know what we need to really show that. So I think we have a strong tailwind now that we need to capture. We have a strong tailwind because of a few things. One, as you say, it's the first time for many people they see their city with blue skies, clean rivers, and not that much traffic on the streets. For us specifically, we are also quite like social distancing friendly way of getting around. you don't need to go into a crammed bus or metro or taxi. We don't know who has been there the latest. So we see some strong tailwinds, but then of course we also have to be realistic. 2020 people will move around less than 2019 for sure.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. So let's start. Hello, Frederick. Just curious how your battery swapping team is operating.
And also, as I mentioned, we operate with electric cargo bikes, electric vans, and so on. We have built exactly. So we have hubs in cities where we charge the batteries and so on, and then our swapping team, they basically go and pick up the batteries, and then they go out in the streets and swap the batteries. And it's really fast. It takes like 30 seconds to swap a battery compared to previously where we had to take a scooter off the street, have it in a warehouse for 10 hours, and then put it back. So leapfrog.
Okay. All right. Vandalism on your e-scooters?
I think what we see on vandalism is that it doesn't really scale. So when we go into a market or a new neighborhood, it peaks just in the beginning when people are curious, they think they can privatize it and so on. And on the early generation scooters also, they were possible to privatize because they were more or less consumer scooters. But now on the latest generations, they're not impossible, but very difficult to hack. You can't privatize them and so on. So overall, it's getting to very low levels.
Do you think that with the end of the lockdown coming soon in France, May 11th to be precise, will be a great alternative, Voi? It will be a great alternative to traditional transportation because the fear of catching the virus. Yeah,
I think we've started to see some interesting data from China, from Wuhan and so on the mode split. And what we've seen is that we have seen a move away from public transportation and away from taxi to private cars mainly, which is a bit worrying. And micromobility like scooters and bikes and so on have increased slightly. So I don't know whether that's a lasting effect, but I mean, coming out of this, I think we see it already now, yeah. Because if you look at a country like Sweden, where we are in some kind of light lockdown, I think we're in the type of lockdown that you in France will be in a couple of months. And what we see now is that people are definitely using micromobility, scooters and bikes and so on. People have not come back really to taxi, ride-hailing, buses between cities like blah blah Flixbus style transportation. So I think we have a positive tailwind there.
But people will need to wash their hands a lot, because using the e-scooters, I mean, when they know everybody put their hand on it, there is this problematic as well to
yeah. So we need to sanitize them. I mean, more often, and also, I mean, the best thing is of course wear gloves.
Yeah. All right. Morgan is asking, how have you been dealing with marketing to stand out from competitors, especially within this crowded market?
Yeah. No, I mean, fundamentally, this is where we stand today is a quite undifferentiated product. I think, Alice, you probably don't. I mean, you probably don't care that much about whether it's a Voi or whether it's a Lime or whether it's a Dot. I mean, small differences. You need to be you need to be a real expert it's starting to rain here. You need to be a real expert to really feel the difference on the. I need to close. It's starting to rain a lot.
That's the noise I was hearing. I was wondering.
Yeah. You need to be a real expert to feel a strong product difference. So what we have said is that we need to differentiate on three things. One, on operational excellence. We need to be cost leaders in this. We need to be able to operate our fleet of vehicles cheaper than anyone else. Second thing, active regulation. So we need to drive and push regulations in the right direction towards licenses, like good licensing regimes. And the third thing is around brand. I mean, you can't copy a brand. It's completely possible to imitate. And I think mid and long term, that will pay off, because we're doing scooters today. But when we are, becoming profitable and going into other modes and perhaps micromobility for goods, not only for people, building a strong brand, on the values we're standing for as a company will pay off.
All right. Two last questions. One from Carlos. What is the impact of safety on your company? How has it influenced the product?
I think since we are in transportation, safety is probably the most important question. Safety and sustainability, and I mean, it starts from us at Voi. It starts really from product design. So some of our vehicle engineers have been working a lot with safety in transportation. I mean, both in Asia, but also here in Europe. Volvo, Saab, and some of the Swedish automotive companies, and we're implementing that already from the product design stage. And then it's about operations, make sure that all vehicles are in good shape. It's about education, be out on the streets. Really educate both our users and not users how to behave around the scooters and micromobility. So it's key. If we are not solving the safety question, then there won't be any scooters or micromobility.
Great to hear from day one. Have you thought about amplifying your product range with bikes, e-bikes?
Yeah, we have. We have been quite close to rolling it out as well. We are interested in it, in the future as well. I mean, now with Corona, everything was a bit flipped around. But we're definitely interested in it.
All right. And last question, my friends, because we are at the end of this Good Vibes interview from Dalibor. Do you have some operation?
Software tool.
Oh yeah, okay. Software tool for fleet swapping optimization. Does it use some artificial intelligence to plan routes?
I mean, everything is AI powered nowadays. Huh? So yeah, we have a software tool for fleet optimization and swap optimization. We do.
All right, cool. I think we're done. I think we've seen everything. Actually, it's been so fast. We didn't even talk about the mission and vision, but we grab it.
We do that next time.
Yeah.
When we can meet in person in Paris.
Please, you have to visit us in Paris.
I will.
Or we come to...
exactly, before that, because we are currently not allowed to come into France, but all European Union citizens are allowed to come to Sweden. So
but where are the planes? Can we take a...
yeah.
I love to end on a good note, and I love to end on the music that you like to hear every
Amazing.
day to keep the vibes up.
Amazing.
So what's your music?
So, of course, it's something Swedish, and it's a song that was played a lot here in my apartment last weekend with some family and friends, and it's ABBA, If It Wasn't for the Night.
All right. So let's hear it now. I want to hear this Swedish music.
Yeah.
And just to end, my friends, you've been watching this interview. It was cool with Frederick and ABBA. And now, if you want, you can actually meet and network with other participants. You just have to click on networking, and you will meet randomly as many people as you want for 5 minutes each. It's really cool. It's good to make business. It's good to connect on a human basis, like simply connect and exchange what you think about this crazy company or the future or whatever. You just talk with someone you never met, but you just experience a super cool connection.
Only good vibes.
Networking, yes. It's good vibes. Thank you very much, Frederick. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.